I'd love for each of you to share a little bit of the work that you're here for and why you wrote it. Let's start with you.
Yes, again, my name is LaDarrion Williams. I wrote Blood at the Root and my upcoming Bones at the Crossroads, which comes out in 5 days. It's basically about this young boy. He gets accepted into like a magical HBCU, which is a historically black college and university in the South. He must go there to learn about his ancestral magic and meet new friends and uncover some dark secrets surrounding his mom's mysterious disappearance. So it's dark academia. I kind of like to say it's picture Vincent Griffith from the originals, and if he got accepted into a college, so it's kind of like that. It's part of a trilogy, and yeah, it's available now.
Fabulous.
Hi, I'm Emily Skrutskie. I'm the author of A Legionnaire's Guide to Love and Peace, which is a romantic fantasy about two soldiers who hook up on the night before a battle that they expect to punch both of their tickets, and then have to deal with the consequences when the world is unexpectedly saved by a plucky band of heroes the next day.
I'm Morgan Ryan. I'm author of A Resistance of Witches, which is a story about what if the witches of Britain fought in World War II. Yes, hold on to that energy. And the story is about a young witch named Lydia Polk who must find a book of incredible destructive power called the Grimorium Bellum before the Nazis can find it.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I did the webcomic Muted, which is completed but now coming into print format with the first 27 episodes in volume 1, which is about a blood witch named Camille in New Orleans going through a journey of identity of her sexuality and also uncovering all the family trauma that she's had to deal with. And and it's, yeah.
Hi, I'm Elise. I was inspired heavily by tarot to write this book, Arcana Academy. Magic flows through specially inked tarot cards, and our main character starts out in prison for using them illegally because it is highly regulated. The second-born prince helps break her out, but in order to protect her identity as now the kingdom's most wanted, she must enroll in the school that he happens to run, become his fake fiancé, and in exchange for all of this and her freedom, agree to commit treason against the king.
Hi, I'm Sangu. I'm the author of Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, a cozy romantic fantasy about a witch who's extremely powerful in her youth, loses most of her magic, resurrecting her great aunt from the dead, and then 15 years later figures out that there might be a way to get her magic back. The problem is she'll need help from a hot, grumpy man, as is often the way. And there's a zombie chicken.
Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so I want to start with a very simple question. Of all the genres in all the world, why did you pick fantasy? I want to start from that end, Sangu.
Oh, okay. It's something I've always loved. I don't think I could have ever imagined myself writing. I mean, I probably can now, but as a child, all I ever wrote was fantasy. I didn't call it that at the time. I was very little, so I would call it fairy tales, or my version of fairy tales, or mostly they were fairy tales starring me. Very like, oh, Sangu goes into the woods and does these things. And I think I vividly remember my mother saying, you can't always... they can't be about you. It's fiction. And yeah, never really looked back.
I feel like it's going to be a common refrain, but fantasy has always been a part of my life as well. I never intended to be a published author. I started writing for fun, posting a chapter a day on Fiction Press, which is the precursor to Wattpad for anyone who is not old. I didn't plan to write a book, and it just happened to be fantasy because that's what I loved, and that became my debut 10 years ago.
As far as fantasy is concerned, it's a similar way as like when I was a child, I was very convinced that I was actually a fairy trapped in a human body and tried to do various spells with like food coloring and water to try and get my wings back. That didn't work, obviously. But growing up became very much less about me and more getting very into anime and originally intending to become an animator and a showrunner. But then I was like, oh, that takes a lot of people, and I'm just one person. I'll draw a comic instead. So I spent a lot of time drawing a comic, and yeah, so that's how I got in.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a common refrain that I think most of us probably grew up on fantasy. I remember my dad reading me The Hobbit when I was like far too young to appreciate it. I used to make potions in the backyard in my like Halloween cauldron that I normally, yep, which is brew exactly out of like pine cones and dirt. Like many children of the 90s, I grew up obsessed with movies like The Craft and Practical Magic. And so, yeah, being drawn to witchlit, I think was a very natural process for me.
Like a lot of people on this panel, I definitely cut my teeth on fantasy from a very early age, but I actually am a sci-fi author. A Legionnaire's Guide to Love and Peace is my 8th book and my first fantasy, so it's kind of a return to form to the kid who was writing Aragon ripoffs.
Yeah, I think for me it's twofold. I don't know if anybody ever sat in the back in the day, like Disney Channel original movies, like every Friday night. Listen, how they used to have like the fantasy movies, and also like they were so ahead of their time. But I also, because I just posted this yesterday, I remember reading Percy Jackson in school, and he was really cool. I thought he was a black kid because I was like a dude named Percy. Hey, but I really wanted to incorporate the way I grew up in the South, especially in Alabama, and mix it with magic, watching black kids cast spells and being the heroes in their own stories, because I felt like we weren't really at the forefront. So I wanted to make sure that they get to see themselves too, and be powerful and not be the sacrificial lambs to everybody else. So
Yeah, I love that. I feel like fantasy, I mean, any fiction really, and the representation that we see there is everything to a kid especially. But
absolutely.
And I love that An Elephant Chasing You turned into fantasy and not some kind of dark memoir, so. So we have a real range of works here. We have everything from the more dark and gritty all the way to the very cozy and warm. And I'm curious, what would you guys say is the difference between cozy fantasy and dark fantasy? Do you think that they have different end goals or purposes? Or let's start on this end, LaDarrion. I'm going to keep going back and forth, so I'm just going to prepare you for that.
I'm not really familiar with cozy fantasy. Really, I don't think mine is cozy at all.
No, I wouldn't say so.
It's a lot going on. But I love dark academia. I think it's really cool just to learn about like what is a college setting, but also like time traveling to like the Haitian Revolution, or like time traveling to Salem, or that's where he goes in book 2. But and mixing in history, that's where I am. I don't think that's cozy fantasy. I'm not going to speak on cozy fantasy because I don't know it, so I don't want to sound ignorant on it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the difference. I'm curious to learn actually on this panel.
Yeah, I feel like it rides the line between are you providing comfort or discomfort? And A Legionnaire's Guide is in a really interesting space where there's like a food subplot where they're trying to, now that the war is over, they're going to go and eat all the foods that they want, and that's very like cozy adjacent. But then there are also demon battles. So I get people telling me like, oh, it's cozy, but but I like existing in that comfort discomfort like spectrum right in the middle.
Reading your book made me hungry the whole time. I literally ordered pie at like 11 p.m.
Listen, it'd be like that.
I feel like there has to be a simple, like a grid for this of like how many people die in your book, and do they die on stage? Because, like if there's an offstage murder and you spend the rest of the time like solving the murder with like lovely friends and everybody wins in the end. Like I feel like that can still be cozy. I think there is like a level of gore that sometimes happens in darker stories. Yeah.
A word that I like to describe Muted as is more like cathartic, because there is a really like a lot of dark stuff happens, a lot of painful, and also just like dealing with a lot of like emotional trauma. But there is like the catharsis in the end where she has people rallying behind her that I guess has that sort of like wrapped up cozy feeling. So I think cathartic is the way that I would lean into that, is sort of, or as if you read fan fiction, a sort of hurt comfort situation.
I think for me it also has to do with the stakes in a cozy fantasy. Not to say the stakes are lower, because they are very still important to those characters and central to their lives, but at least from what I feel like I've seen, it's not as much we're going to go and save the entire planet and fight evil kings, and it's more, we need to save the farm, or we need to make this cute potion, or save the cafe. And darker fantasy, I think, can stray a little bit more towards some of those epic themes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with the comfort and the catharsis. I think that's bang on. For me, I think it's not necessarily low stakes, it's low stress. That's what
That's a good
cozy
way to put it.
fantasy is. It's like, at no point, no matter what's happening in the book, at no point are you ever genuinely afraid that things are going to go permanently wrong for the characters you love. Kind of like romance, there's sort of like an unwritten contract where you're promising a happy ending. So I think that's what cozy, like that's the difference for me between cozy and dark.
I think that makes so much sense, and I feel like there's so often, sorry, I'm so close to this mic, but I feel like there's so often a romance subplot going on in a cozy fantasy. Okay, Sangu, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on tropes, and is there one that you always gravitate towards, either as a writer or a reader, or one that you'd rather poke your eye out than ever read ever again?
I love tropes. I think that, like anything else, it's another tool in the writer's toolbox. And tropes are so much fun. I love playing with them. I love subverting them. I love sort of leaning into them. My favorite trope used to be Grumpy Sunshine. And it's one I still love, and it's very popular. But after writing this, I kind of feel like I'm leaning towards Grumpy. It's very me. The sunshine is gone. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I think I love tropes because it's a shorthand to communicate to readers very easily sort of what content they might find in a book. And of course, ideally, you want the trope, the way you execute it as an author, to be so much more than just a few simple words. But at the same time, you want to quickly say, is this book for you or not? And if you like these things, you might like the way that I interpret them. For me, I love enemies to lovers. I just make them not fans of each other at the beginning or outright hate each other. And then by the end, I'm going to be screaming for them to kiss. And that's what I like to write, and what I put in here, and what I've put actually in quite a few of my books, honestly.
I really like tropes, but I'm also really bad at like identifying them, like in my work, where someone was like, just grab your stuff, and I was like, I don't know, gay witches, I guess, that's all I got. If that interests you, then that's then that's what you get. But like, and then like, I'm obsessed with TV tropes and like someone writing out all the various different ways that can come about. So there's none that I like can super say that I dislike or like. They're cool. I think they're useful, but I'm not good at using them.
I'm a big fan of a found family trope. Also a big fan of like the self-sacrifice, specifically the like, this magic is too big for you to handle and it's going to destroy you, and you're going to do it anyway. Like we know they are. There's just something about that. I don't know, the scale of that feels really satisfying to me. Also, I don't know if there's a word for this, but when the characters almost kiss and then they don't. Big fan of angst. Yes, angst. Love some angst.
I'm going to come out on the side of friends to lovers on this one, because I love the subtlety of the intimacy already being there, and then how do you step over that line, which is something we've got in Legionnaire's Guide, and something that we don't have in Legionnaire's Guide, but recently I identified like a subset of the friends to lovers trope that I really, really enjoy, which is what I call the grumpy sunshine atmospheric inversion, where you've got characters who have known each other from childhood, and when they were kids, one was the grumpy and one was the sunshine, and as adults, it flips. That is so fun to see in action.
Yeah, I think the Chosen One for me, I like to flip it on its head a little bit with my books, because with the Chosen One, I guess you're the Chosen One, right? But you also have to break generational curses, and I love seeing main characters go through that. How are they actively breaking generational curses within their families or within their personal lives? But also, yeah, definitely found family, because you get to choose your family when it comes to friends, and like you get to not deal with that family drama. So yeah, those are like some of my favorites.
All of you picked ones you love. No drama. Where's all the hatred?
Okay, I do hate. Okay, I don't know if this is you know that moment like when the hero is like they got the villain, they're like punching the villain or like they're casting the spell, and then they're like, it's like the one in like Black Panther when or Wakanda Forever when dude literally killed the Queen Ramonda. And, you know, her spirit comes back like, think of who you are. No, I'm thinking of who I am. I'm gonna still kill the villain. Like I don't know, that irritates my soul. Like you literally killed my entire family, but I have to forgive you in this moment as I'm like punching you into the ground. Like I don't know, that just that irritates my soul.
Thank you so much for answering.
Yeah, I'm starting the drama. I am the drama.
And I feel like, Emily, you also played with the Chosen One kind of paradigm in a
he's
really fun way.
obnoxious. He's this little rich asshole. He's grown up with 100 tokens around his neck, and he's gonna use them.
And I love that you didn't focus on like that little Chosen One person. It's like separate. It's very interesting. But anyways, thank you so much. Okay, if you could steal the magic ability of a character from any work of fiction, film, book, TV, yes, think about it. Think about it down the line. Outside of the ones on this panel, what would it be? Who would it be, and why?
Okay, this is a movie that a lot of people I feel like slept on, but the movie Jumper.
Oh, yes.
Like, yo, I would be jumping into banks and just stealing everything and then jump out. Like, he got a little arrogant, though, in the movie because he was jumping everywhere, but I was like, I don't know. I think that was, like, a really cool, like, ability, and that's what I would be doing, and just jump into banks and take the money and then jump out and just go live my life.
Plane tickets.
Right.
Oh, man. I'm blanking on any characters who can do this, but I'm just, I got food on the brain now. We've got food on the brain, so just being able to create food for anybody and whatever you imagine, making it possible, that would be really cool.
I grew up watching Alex Mack. And I feel like she could turn into the silver goo, but I feel like she also had telekinesis, right? There were like a couple, she had like a good array of powers. I feel like I would want to be Alex Mack.
I'm going to have to double up on the teleportation. I was going to say teleportation, but I was like, I can't think of any examples, so I'll just say jumper too.
I would probably have to say the main character's power from Persona 5, which if you're not familiar, you can summon these different persona that can do different things. They have different powers, so it's very versatile. So it seems like it would apply to a lot of different situations.
As somebody who has been on many, many flights and trains in the last week, I would also have to go with teleportation.
Yeah, team teleportation.
I want to say Nightcrawler. I think that's what he does. Yeah, that's what I was picturing in my head. Yeah.
Sangu, back to you. So every one of these novels plays with heritage in some way, whether the main characters are trying to escape it or to feel worthy of it or to protest some kind of tradition that's been passed down. And I feel like that's honestly often true of fantasy. I feel like we're always meeting characters where they're about to make some kind of challenge or how things have been practiced, or a character who's about to discover what their lineage is. What do you think makes fantasy uniquely curious or an ideal framework or playground for digging into those questions?
So the big thorny one.
Yeah.
Right, that's a question.
That's a really good question, and I don't know that I necessarily have. I think the metaphor of like the ease with which you can use magic and fantastical systems to represent things about the real world without specifically saying it's about this. I think that works really well. I find it. For me personally, I find that using fantasy and magic to kind of capture or encapsulate an emotional journey with mental health or mental illness or sort of rediscovering yourself, I like doing that, and I feel like fantasy is uniquely good at that because it's a way of saying this hurts and this could make it better without saying this hurts and this could make it better.
I write epic fantasy, so other worlds, nothing related to ours. And of course, there are various allegories that work their way in. But I think for me, on the question of like heritage and history that comes up in fantasy books, I love the world building. That's one of my favorite parts about creating the book, is creating the world. And so, for example, in Arcana Academy, I have the two main characters, Clara, that's our female main character who the book is told from, and Kalis is the love interest, and Kalis is very much a product of the past, and Clara is very forward-looking. And so there's a duality there, but both of them are put into their starting position sort of because of where they came from and the power they inherited from that. And it's fun to play with how they use that, for sure.
I think visually, in a graphic novel sense, magic and fantasy helps to just visualize more emotional struggles, just because with Camille, she is a blood witch, but also, spoiler, I guess, she's also half from a plant witch family, and also when she's been in this family, she's been a very emotionally repressed because her aunt is terrible. But so a lot of this is having to deal with controlling this other half of her magic that she doesn't understand, with vines literally exploding everywhere, while also learning how to process her own emotions at the same time. So it's sort of the symbols and goes hand in hand.
I think there's something really universal about stories about heritage, and they do definitely show up a lot in fantasy, but I feel like they show up kind of everywhere in storytelling, because so often when you're building a character, the question comes down to where are you coming from culturally? Where are you coming from? What did your parents do or not do that hurt you or helped you? What are the things you inherited? And so often when you're talking about magic, that is something in the world that is inherited from the people who came before you or is given to you culturally, the same way that politics or religion or education or any other thing that affects us as people, it ends up becoming kind of a mirror to the way that we all grow up, affected by where we were born and to whom and what they did and didn't do. So I just think there's something really attractive about those stories.
Yeah, in Legionnaire's Guide, it's basically generational wealth, the magic system. There are tokens that have inherent power that were handed down by angels thousands of years ago that now have kind of coalesced into these families. And I did this because I was having such a hard time thinking about magic as a sci-fi writer that I realized I needed to concretize it into something where it wouldn't be passed down, hereditary, moving in a kind of eugenics direction, and instead isolated into a physical form that then behaves the same as money because it is functionally power on the same level.
Yeah, I think the way my books deal with ancestral veneration, I always think back to being in school. Right, we learned about Greek mythology all the time, but we didn't learn about African mythology. We didn't learn about Southern folklore, African American folklore, but because it was demonized, and a lot of times in media, in books, even in our own community. My books deal with the Southern Baptist Church. My main character, he can say the Book of Psalms and there are spells. He can speak life to things. He can speak death to things because that's where we grew up. But it's also he's learning. He's running from it, but that speaks to a different, a bigger picture of we ran from, a lot of times, Black Americans, we ran from our spirituality because it was seen as demonic, or it was seen as bad. But that's what carried us. That's what carried our generation. Their ancestral worship. They dance, they laugh, they sing. Even songs have a powerful. Intention, like listening to gospel music, and I infuse a lot of that Southern gospel into my work, and he says those words, and that's how his magic activates. He even has in book 2, he has smoke, and you can see the faces in the smoke. That's his ancestors, known and unknown, because they're always guiding him, they're always challenging him, and they're always looking after him, because that's important too. And again, it's flipping that stereotype on his head, because it has been demonized in media.
Thank you so much for sharing, guys. Okay, so back on your end. What do you think makes a hero figure compelling?
I think the humanity in them. Every hero we see, we always look for the humanity. I don't always look for the flaws in every character. I look at them, how do they overcome the circumstances that was kind of dealt with, to them. Because a lot of times our flaws come from our circumstances. It's not we're inherently flawed. Sometimes it's just the way we grow up, the way we, the way, even my main character, he he was broken by the people that were supposed to love him, right? And now he has to put the pieces back together, which speaks to like the younger generation. We're the generational chain breakers. So I love like, aspects of that character, and that's what I think makes them very, very compelling. How do they overcome that in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I love a hero who has some sort of core principle, and the story is all about testing that. How far does it go? How much are they willing to sacrifice to stay? I mean, even like the most recent Superman movie was so good at presenting a hero who's just on the side of good, no matter what it compels him to do, and showing the way that gets probed over and over again, no matter like how far the villains are willing to go. I think that's what really draws me to a character.
So I was a theater major in college,
Yes,
and
come on,
I had
theater.
and I had a professor who once told us that every play, and I extrapolated from that, every story, I think, should start with a person in a mess. And so I don't want to say that I do look for the flaws, but sometimes I look for the flaws in a person. I think it's hard to root for someone who is perfect when we so often see imperfection in ourselves. So starting with, like, here's something that this person is not good at. My character Lydia she's terrible at lying. She's terrible at not speaking her mind. She's pretty undiplomatic. And I'm like, okay, this is a person that I can root for, because I think that people find that, people who have that problem find that relatable. But I also think you have to put that person into a mess in order to be able to start to root for them and watch them work their way back out of that mess.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm a big fan, like, as far as like stuff that I watch and also like to write is, I like seeing people kind of being broken at the start, being kind of broken and beat down and a grumpy sort of person, and just like having to kind of actually like find that humanity. It's like where they are sort of like adrift and not really connected to anything, and just like going through the process of finding what's important to them and finding what connections that actually make them enjoy being alive. And I like seeing them become like real people.
Echoing the flaws, I think that those are very important to a hero. For example, in Arcana Academy, one of the things that I tried to do was explore the duality of positives when they turn into flaws. So the main character, Clara, will do anything for her family or the people that like she has sworn herself to and loves. And even things that she will make her go, I realize objectively this is not the most strategic or smart decision, but you can't expect me to be strategic or smart when this person is holding someone I love hostage. And sort of how something can be good, but also be taken to these extremes, and then what will the hero do when they're pushed in those extremes, and how do they bend? I find that really fascinating.
I'm not sure I have anything new to add. I feel like I want to echo everybody. I especially liked Emily's Superman example, because I think that was a really good one. I suppose maybe what I really enjoy in a hero is seeing the conflict between what they want and what they need. Because very often, sometimes they're the same thing, but very often a character wants something and it's their goal, and by the end of the story, it's about understanding that what they needed all along was something else, and it's about how those two don't necessarily work together, and it's about choosing one over the other. I really enjoy that, yeah.
I love that. Wow, such like wide range of answers. That was great. I want to take it to the other side. So I want to talk about the villains. I stole this question from Henry Herr, author of Many, a picture book. But do you think that villains must always be evil, Sangu?
No. No. No, that's my answer.
All right, next question.
I think, sometimes a good villain is just straight up psychopathically evil. But I think a lot of the time, the most compelling villains are the ones that you can see where they're coming from. You can almost root for them, but there's something there that means you can't. It's often about, a lot of things will mirror the hero and the villain, where they both want something, and it might be the same thing, but one is willing to go to these lengths to do it, and the other one is not. And so I think that I find that more interesting, just because it's more real. I feel like very few villains we encounter in the real world are just straight up evil. They're often people we can relate to in a lot of ways. There's a bridge too far, and they lose you. And so, yeah. So I don't think they have to, no.
I enjoy when the villain starts out looking like they're just sort of evil, and then you start to sort of learn more about them to uncover those layers. That process I really enjoy, and may or may not be in here as well. But I will have to say also, I feel like right now it is very in vogue to have these villains that sort of have these tragic backstories or can be redeemed. And I will say there is a part of me that kind of misses like, no, that's just an evil entity. It's just evil. Maybe it's going back a little too much to Tolkien, but I feel like I would be cool if some of that came back into the world of fantasy.
A big thing for me, like sort of on that note, is just like the idea of choice, because like you choose every day whether you want to do good things or bad things. And the thing with Athalie, the main antagonist in Muted, is like the main problem there between her and Camille is like Athalie is like, this is how we've always done things. This is how we will always continue to do things. If you do anything else, then you're wrong. And because if you do something else, then that means that I didn't have to do it, but I did it. And so like she just can't accept a reality where her life could have been different. She has to continue to go by these rules that she doesn't even necessarily agree with, but to change her mind would just shatter everything. So she just keeps doubling down instead of, looking at your life and being like, actually, yeah, I am really unhappy, and changing things. She just gets worse and worse because she just keeps digging the hole deeper and deeper, which is tragic in its own way, but, she could choose to get out and she doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's something fun about like a good old-fashioned psychopath, but at the same time, I think there's something a lot more satisfying about, like maybe the villain is a parental figure and they're just too damaged. They think they're doing right and they're not, and they can't heal themselves, and it doesn't stop them from being the villain of your story. It's just that they're not the villain of their own story. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on in this book was this question of like, yes, obviously in the background it's World War II. You've got a really clear, black and white villain here in Adolf Hitler, who does not appear in the book, but his actions are on every page. But then I think the actual villain of this story, with no spoilers, is folks who are making deals behind the scenes, who are compromising, who are saying, well, this works for me, even if it doesn't work for everyone else, so I'm going to worry about what's best for me and for my people and not worry about what's best for other people. Yes, I'm compromising myself, but compromises have to be made. And I think that there's something very dangerous about that mindset. But a person who is thinking in that way isn't thinking of themselves as a villain. They're thinking of themselves as someone who is dealing with unfortunate circumstances. But at the end of the day, I think there's a question there about, when do you become the villain if you start doing what's right for you and wrong for other people?
Absolutely. Yeah, Legionnaire's Guide is one of those kind of more straightforward villains. At least the demons are invaders from another plane who are doing very, very bad things and do need to be taken out. But I feel like a lot of the villains I've been really compelled by recently are the ones who, at their core, have a good idea, or they're doing something that from a certain point of view is the right thing, but for the wrong reasons or in the wrong way. An example like The Incredibles, where Syndrome is trying to democratize superpower through technology, but he's doing this by killing all the superheroes and making it a meritocratic system where you're going to have to pay for the superpowers.
Great example.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, I think everyone said on the panel. I always kind of refer my villain, if I'm writing a villain, to like Killmonger. Just the way, just the way he operated into things. Yes, I don't agree with what he did, but it's like one of those things. He's like, yeah, but I understand why you did it, though. Especially being cut off. If you're cut off from like something that could have saved you, and the people that in that safe haven, they know that it could have saved you, and you're cutting somebody off from that, like that. I understand why people become a villain. Like, I understand them, like, more and more. So I kind of model my villains after that.
Yeah. Another great villain, Killmonger. Yeah. Okay, so I have a couple more questions, and then I want to open it up to the audience. So I'm just going to start with, are there any fantasy authors or books that you've read recently or that you want to read that you would recommend? Starting with you.
Dang, every time I'm asking it's boom. It's like always on. I read it, but I'm always a big fan of, I modeled my career after Tomi Adeyemi, who wrote Children of Blood and Bone, the series. Just what she's done for Black fantasy. I just really am inspired by her and her work and her words and just what she's all about. So, yeah.
That's great.
My good friend Tara Sim writes incredible epic fantasy, and I'm in awe of her because her City of Dusk series has 5 magic systems, and I can't even write one. So that's...
she's doing that.
Incredible. I also really love The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez, which does just such interesting things with narrative layering. It's basically a turducken of a story with 3 different levels of storytelling operating and interoperating all at the same time. And then I recently read The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, which is a story about a magic school, but from the perspective of the teachers. It's so much fun.
I love that. Alex E. Harrow is an auto-buy for me, and I saw one very excited hand. Yeah, she, and particularly Starling House, which I read recently, just blew my mind. And as someone who grew up kind of like at the tail end of the Rust Belt, I felt very kind of a kinship with this community where it was set, where it felt like gritty and modern and romantic and gothic and like new and old, and the dialogue was so modern and approachable, but the prose was so beautiful. And it's just every time I read one of her books, I am mad that I didn't write it first.
There is a currently still ongoing manga series called, I'm going to feel bad if I get this word wrong, Witch Hat Atelier. It's French, but it's absolutely gorgeous to look at. Amazing character designs, character development, really cool magic system that's just like so well thought out, and just like everything about the world and like the creatures. It's like, again, it's just like, oh, it's genius. Why didn't I think of that? It's just like, while I'm reading it, I was like, and I started reading it after I finished Muta, but I'm reading it like, now, if I could go back in time. But it's really good, so.
I always have to recommend Daniel Jensen if you love romantasy, either Her Bridge Kingdom or A Curse Carved in Bone. I recently finished Emma Haum's The Deathless One. I think that comes out next month. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun in like a very angry, feminine rage kind of way. And I'm currently reading Stephanie Garber's Alchemy of Secrets, which is also out later this year, and it is fabulous. I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm very optimistic that I'm going to have that same feeling by the end of the book.
I'm having that moment where, what are books? All books have gone. I've got one. Yeah, I quite recently read and loved Tasha Suri's The Isle in the Silver Sea. It comes out in October. It's a sapphic reincarnation fantasy in which fairy tales power the land, and when a fairy tale dies, bits of the land die too. It's incredible. Highly, highly recommend it.
Wow, I didn't know that book was coming out. It is now on my list. Okay, so I feel like often we have writers in the audience, so I want to start with Sangu, and I want to know, do you have any advice for any writers that are here right now?
There's probably lots of things I could say.
Figure out teleportation.
I think it's, like, speaking as somebody who went through this, it's very hard to keep believing in yourself, to keep believing in the story you're telling, because it feels like you're pouring everything you've got into it and it doesn't seem to be good enough. And so the best advice I can give you there, and if you're dealing with that, is to be kind to yourself, because it's okay if you feel like you're not there yet. It's okay if it takes you a while longer. It's okay if you only write for 5 minutes a day or once a week. You don't have to be I have no discipline. You don't have to be disciplined. You don't have to have structure. You just, if you love it, do it, and that's always going to be good enough.
Kind of piggybacking on that, my eternal advice to new writers is let your first draft be bad and believe in the editorial process. For me, every author is different, but for me, the first draft is probably only about 20 to 30% of the process. The other, like 70%, is editing. And so I think a lot of times new writers will compare their rehearsal to someone else's on-stage performance, like compare their draft to a published work and be like, oh, I'm not good enough. And it's like, this book that was published, I think it was version 10 or 11 that finally made it to publication. So if you're on version 1, of course it isn't going to look like a published book, and that's okay.
Right.
Ours don't either.
Sort of tacking onto that is like something that I always try to hold on to is the being done is better than being perfect, because it's never going to be perfect no matter how many times you write it, but having it done is like such a big important like aspect, just like for your mind to be like, oh, I can actually finish something, oh, I can actually like do this. And it's like that's why sort of it's not necessary, but I wouldn't recommend starting with like your big magnum opus, because that is a lot of pouring in. But like if you do like some short stories, you're like, oh, I finished it. And then you like do another one, you're like, oh, I've finished 10 short stories, and you have these little bumps to sort of build this
Chase
like
the dopamine.
muscle power. Yeah, exactly. This muscle, and then like as you learn while you're writing those, then you're like, okay, now I'm ready to tackle this big, huge project.
I feel like my advice is going to go against the grain a little bit. And this is specifically for writers who have a dream of publication and of traditional publication specifically, that there are, like, yes, do it for the love of it, do it for the fun, do it in those like stolen moments between making dinner and putting your kid to bed, but there is also, I think a lot of us have like powers that we have acquired in our 9-to-5s that we don't always tap into when it comes to our writing. We know how to set goals. We know how to hit metrics and hit deadlines and do those things. And I think a lot of us don't necessarily immediately think to apply that to our writing. And particularly when it comes to doing things like querying agents and doing like all that hard, scary stuff that comes after writing the book. And I think tapping into those powers for yourself and saying like, okay, I've been doing this for my manager for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Now, can I do it for me? Can I do it for my book? Is a really, really powerful tool that I think more of us should be tapping into.
I'm going to say what's been said before, but in a slightly different way, which is embrace iteration. Enjoy the fact that you get to do this multiple times. Now, when I plan that I'm going to write a book, I always plan to write it twice, which is it's going to take a little bit longer, but it takes so much pressure off of that first draft because I don't have to get it right the first time. I could get it right the second, and I know that there's going to be a second before I turn it in.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everything that they said. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a big panel, so.